Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today we'll be talking about assault marines. Now, assault marines are a unit which suffer a lot in 8th edition from a bad reputation. They are considered generally not effective for the points in comparison to a lot of very similar units, especially with Blood Angels, but also in Space Marines. You've got your other types of veterans such as Vanguard veterans, you've got your Death Company, loads of units which are, for a couple more points a model, way better at killing stuff. So why would you take Assault Marines? Well, Assault Marines fulfill a variety of functions in your army which, once you get used to using them and learn the specific tactics which they can be used with, you will soon find them to be just an absolutely excellent unit that pays dividends and gives you a return on your points tactically and in terms of kills, game after game after game. So what I'll talk about today is sort of what they can do broadly, and sort of the loadouts that you will need to take. I'll give you a couple of specific loadouts to take, and then I'll give you some specific tasks on the battlefield that each of these loadouts can fulfill, and I'll give you a couple of examples of how to fit them into your army, how they easily fit into a variety of armies, and sort of what types of armies they fit nicely into. So, when we look firstly at what they can do broadly, we would look at sort of three overall topics, which is that they can take objectives, they can soften up the enemy, and that's the enemy army as a whole, and enemy positions, and just in terms of reducing the numbers of enemies when you're facing like enemy models when you're facing horde armies, and part of all of that is that they can kill OBSEC units very easily and effectively. They're very good at going toe to toe against OBSEC units. What I'll do before I go into those specific, the more specific ideas within those three broader topics, what I'll do is I'll talk about the loadouts that you want to be taking and a couple of the principles that you want to keep in mind when you are taking Assault Marines in your lists and using them on the battlefield. So first of all, a couple of principles with the loadouts is that you want to be keeping these loadouts really cheap. Now, I have used Assault Marines through a variety of loadouts over a variety of editions, and gone are the times, I'm telling you right now, gone are the times where you give Assault Marines special weapons. That will just lead to disappointment. You cannot get Assault Marines loaded up with special weapons close enough to the types of units that you're wanting to shoot them with without those Assault Marines becoming a high priority target, becoming specifically targeted and wiped out. Because the thing about Assault Marines is, when they're just facing a smattering of fire, a little bit of fire here and there, or maybe some targeted fire from some OBSEC units they're about to attack, they can shrug that off relatively easily. But if, you know, someone focuses a battle cannon on them, or like some plasma fire on them, or something like that, and really decides they want to kill them, then they can be wiped out quite quickly. So there's sort of a big difference there in their survivability. You want to keep them at the level where they don't draw very much attention to themselves at all. So forget your melter guns, forget stuff like that. I used to drop in, you know, 5-man squads with 2 melter guns and a combi melter and just go to town on heavy vehicles, but you just can't do that kind of thing anymore. So you will be using cheap units, and the most points you will spend on a unit is 80 points. So the first loadout you'll take is a 5-man squad with a power weapon, and that'll come to either 69 or 70 points depending on whether you take a power sword or a power axe, and both have their benefits. Power sword is better against, you know, with its AP -3, and with the Blood Angel special rule you'll be wounding a lot of stuff on 3s and 2s if it's toughness 3, so that a power sword is very effective.
But a power axe, you know, if you face in your meta a lot more high toughness stuff, power axe can really help you go to town with, especially if you're a blood angel with that +1 to wound. You know, you're still wounding a lot of stuff on, you know, 3s and 2s, even high toughness stuff. So that'll be your first loadout, 5-man unit with 1 power weapon on the sergeant. And I'll go into the uses for that unit in a second, because it has some very specific uses for each loadout that we're going to take. And then the other slightly more expensive unit with a variety of slightly more subtle roles is a 5-man jump pack unit, and you don't take any power weapons for this unit. I have to underline that you don't take any power weapons for this unit, because the second you take power weapons for that unit, the shiny glow of the power weapons will draw enemy fire against this 5-man with jump packs, 5 men with jump packs, and they really need to be kept alive and tactically flexible for sort of action in the late game, because when you get to the late game and, you know, a lot of the heavy firepower is dead, a lot of the special weapons are dead and that kind of thing on both sides, you know, having a jump pack, a unit of 5 men, 4 or 5 men, maybe 3 men left over for taking a bit of fire and that, and, you know, done a bit of damage in combat, a unit of a handful of men with jump packs and power armor is, you know, really great. It's really maneuverable, really resilient in the late game. So, you know, you really want to keep those guys just jump packs, and that'll come to 80 points. And that's the most you're ever going to spend on an assault unit, because what you're trying to do here is you're trying to get the maximum return on a unit that can effectively kill cheap things very easily and do a lot of very effective tactical roles in your army, but every time you spend more points on it, it has to achieve more to get those points back, and it's not able to do those things because it's not very good at killing things, and those points you're spending are to make them better at killing things, but they're not going to be able to do it. It's not going to work. So now we've looked at our 2 loadouts, let us look at, in more specific detail, what we will be using these loadouts for. And remember, the 3 overall uses of our assault marines were to take objectives, to soften up the enemy in a variety of ways, both on a unit and army-wide level, and to kill obsec units. So we'll discuss all of those in more detail, looking at what the 2 loadouts can achieve. Now, what I'll do is, to keep things straightforward, I'll discuss everything that you would do with the 5-man unit with a power weapon and no jump packs, and then I'll discuss what you would do with a 5-man jump pack unit. So we'll keep those 2 roles separate. There is a little bit of blurring of the lines, but I'll discuss that at the end. So before we get stuck in with either, a couple of principles is throughout this you won't really be using command points at all to support these units. Your command points are valuable unless you're running a brigade list or something like that. You know, and even in a brigade list, you know, you really want to be using your command points to keep your termies alive and that kind of thing, to make sure your last cannons and heavy weapons are doing damage, re-rolling valuable saves, you know, and using high value stratagems such as 3d6 to charge, and on occasion when you really have to do some damage, striking again with a unit in combat. So your command points you're not going to be spending. Another thing is that you need to be using crack grenades at every opportunity. Now, the thing is that crack grenades are something that you forget about a lot of the time, but in the variety of roles that these assault marines will be fulfilling, they will often be within range of chucking a crack grenade, and I cannot tell you the amount of times a crack grenade has finished off a armored unit, or, you know, killed a armored model or an elite model, or even just killed a guardsman and made my charge a little easier. You know, a crack grenade thrown around the battlefield is always effective. It doesn't have to be at the unit you're charging, just chuck those crack grenades wherever they're most effective. But, you know, a single crack grenade can make a big difference. Oh, and just one thing to mention is, when I say you're not going to be using command points, you may use command points for wings to redeploy your 5-man jump pack squad on the last turn of the game, or around turn 5, but we'll discuss that in more detail in a bit. So, 5 men on foot with a power weapon. What can they do? Well, first of all, it's a little bit misguiding because they won't be on foot, they will be in a rhino. Now, I'm not suggesting you buy a rhino specifically for the role of carrying these assault marines. That can be effective, and all the tactics that I'll be discussing right now can be done more effectively with 2 units of assault marines in a rhino, but that is a more expensive investment, but it can mean that when you're fighting tougher lists, and you really want to soften up the enemy, you really need to take an objective, or you really need to trim off quite a few OBSEC units against a horde list. 2 assault marines in a rhino can be effective. But what I'm talking about here is, say you've got a couple of transports knocking around, you often keep a couple of attack marine units and transports and that kind of thing. Have 1 unit or 2, depending on how many transports you've got, spread around your army of 5 men with the power weapons, because what they'll be doing is they will be sitting in your army, and in many ways they'll be acting like goblin fanatics in Warhammer Fantasy. Now, I used to play a lot. I still play to a degree every few months, the odd game of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition. But I've played fantasy since I was a kid. Always loved my fantasy, and 8th edition and Goblin Fanatics are, a really great and fun unit. And for those of you who don't know what they are, they effectively sit inside the rest of the Goblin army, and then when a juicy target gets close to the Goblin lines, without the Goblin lines themselves charging forward, these fanatics will burst forward on effectively a suicide mission and strike out at the enemy and do significant damage, or achieve a certain, and before dying. Now, we're not using ours like fanatics, we're not trying to do massive amounts of damage, but they will be like fanatics in that they will be hidden as little juicy pockets of tactical efficiency across your army. So say you've got 3 rhinos or 2 rhinos, and you've got a unit of 5 assault marines with a power sword in there, that's really going to be low on your opponent's radar in terms of units he's going to destroy with his heavy weapons. If you've got unit with a couple of tactical marines in, that's even going to be high because they've got OBSEC, but you're also going to have all your Terminators, your Death Company, your Land Raider, Storm Ravens. You're going to have so many really powerful units that really need attention. That's one of the benefits of being a Blood Angels or Space Marine player, but Blood Angels especially. One of the really good things is that you will have loads of juicy targets for the enemy to shoot at, which means that these tactics just sort of come off, they just work, so as long as you don't draw too much attention to yourself. So that little 5-man unit is going to sit in a rhino as you move up to the centre of the board to take control of the board. Then what it's going to do is it will jump out and perform a variety of tasks when you so decide. So one of the things it can do is it can take objectives. So what you will target is you will target specifically objectives on the edge of the action. So usually on your battlefield, as the sort of armies move forward in the first and second turn, there will be a sort of focus area where most of your units are, and that will be around sort of maybe a concentration of objectives or a concentration of cover. And there will always be an objective on the outer edge of this or nearby this action. And what you will want to do is you will want to use this 5-man assault unit to jump out of the rhino at an opportune moment and charge at the unit of OBSEC that is sat on this objective. Say they've got a unit of, they could have a unit of Pathfinders on there, which I know aren't OBSEC, but still, could have a unit of Scouts. You could be facing a small unit attack Marines if you're talking about Imperium. You could be talking Guardians. You could be talking a variety of toughness 3 and toughness 4 5 to 10 man units that are, OBSEC, that will be sat on this objective, contributing firepower and relatively protected by the units close by that are, sort of the bigger units than them, but they're on the edge. So they're not isolated, but they're on the edge. And you will run out and you'll strike that unit. And why use assault marines for this task? Why not have a unit of 5 tactical marines just hop out and do the same job? Well, this is why. Because let's say you have your rhino there and you see this objective and it's just near sort of the main action, and you think, right, this is my opportunity to take this objective now. If I seize this, then I've got some big units going on, they've got some big units going on in this area, but I'll have that objective and they'll have to take it off me, and I'll have more board control. I'm doing better in the battle overall. So your options are, you hop your tactical marines out, probably, say even your 10, 9, 10 inches, up to 20 inches away. You hop your tactical marines out, 9 inches roughly, but you can't really fit all 10 of them into cover, so they're a bit exposed. You rapid fire at the unit, and let's say they've got a 4 up cover save, but it's 3 up because they're in cover, and you're only firing bolters, so you'll kill, 1 or 2 maybe if you're lucky. If they've got a 3 up save because you're unlucky and you're shooting at power armor, they'll be on a 2 up save and you'll kill very few, and you won't really have an effect on that unit to the point where it's more viable to take the objective off them. However, you're then exposed, and they've got a bit of firepower around that area, and they say, oh look, there's some OBSEC units just exposed at the right time, they're not in their transport, they're close by, they're in rapid fire range or whatever, or they're nearby, a variety of weapons. Bump, your OBSEC's dead, and you fail to take the objective off them. Or you sit in your transport, you fire off your storm bolters, you fire a bit more fire at them, but basically you're taking more and more fire away from that central area where you need to be killing stuff and need to be using your firepower to, turn the tide of the battle in that central mix of the battle, the sort of core area of the battle. You're taking firepower away from there in order to root these guys out, because they are harder to kill because they're not exposed, they're in cover, and they're sat on this objective. And even though they're OBSEC, they're infantry, and that's hard to root out in 8th edition. So, I offer you another option. You have a 5-man unit of assault marines. You hop them out. They have effectively a 16-inch almost guaranteed threat range, because you can move them out 9 inches, and then they will, on 2 dice without any combat, command point rerolls, generally get a 7-inch charge. That's a charge you can expect. 7 inches, a 3 on one dice, a 4 on another, or a 4 on a 3. That's fair. You'll roughly get around a 7. So actually, think about it, you've got a 17-inch charge because you only have to get within 1 inch of an enemy. But sometimes there will be upper level, like in a little building or something like that. Sometimes you'll have to get a bit closer, but what I'm effectively saying is, by turn 2, in a rhino or a transport, you will be close enough. That is a guarantee. And what you'll do is you'll hop your assault marines out and charge them in. Yeah, okay, they've got Overwatch. Yeah, they might even have a flamer. You'll lose at worst an assault marine. If you're really, really unlucky, you'll lose 2, but that is so unlikely, it's not worth worrying about. You'll probably just lose none. Hitting on 6s, maybe you're fighting in someone who's got a little better, they've got some kind of boost to their Overwatch, but still, you're not going to lose the whole unit by any means. They've got power armor, they're toughness 4, they'll be fine. You're attacking OBSEC units. You get into your combat, and because you're Blood Angels, you'll probably be wounding them on 2s. They're probably toughness 3. The majority of OBSEC units in 40k are toughness 3. So you'll probably be wounding them on 2s because you're strength 4, which means you'd wound on 3s. So general space marines, you're still doing well, and Blood Angels +1 to wound, you'll be wounding on 2s. So you will butcher them way more effectively. You won't wipe out the unit by any means. You're not using Death Company, you're not using Terminator, you're not using a mega death combat unit, but you will butcher a few, like say 5 guardsmen, because you've got a power sword, you've got all your chainsword attacks. You'll kill a few of these OBSEC units. Now at that point you have achieved your goal, because they have 2 options. They either stay in combat with you, they've already lost a few units, they're going to do basically no damage to you, because let's face it, they're probably strength 3, your toughness 4, so they're probably wounding you on 5s. You've got a 3 up armor save. Remember again, they haven't had the advantage of a buff to their armor save or to their save overall through cover because you've hit them in close combat. So again, you've wounded them better. You've hit them with probably more attacks because, let's face it, your attack marines, you're probably not going to jump them out into rapid fire range. You're going to jump them out into cover and probably not get them all into rapid fire range. So you've got way more attacks in there. You've wounded more effectively. They've not had as good a save. You just do more damage. And at that point, they either pull out, and they're probably not shooting next turn 99% of the time. And if they can shoot, it'll be reduced. It'll be on a -1, or they won't be getting orders to reroll ones or something like that because they've had to have the order to get back in the fight if they're guard. So the unit's probably not shooting, and you've bought yourself some time on that objective. You'll be able to take that objective or drive next turn, or get your assault marines back in if they shoot them. If you butcher the whole unit, they will probably shell that objective, clear the assault marines out. But good, it actually takes a lot of firepower to clear, 3, 4, 5. Probably 4 or 5 power armor toughness 4 units out of cover because they'll be on 2-up saves, and even with AP -2, AP -3 weaponry, they're still going to be surviving quite a lot of damage, which again is taking enemy fire away from the main battle. So you will have softened up the enemy and taken that objective. If the unit dies at that point, it's fine because you can get your attack marines on there. You've got your Rhino with attack marines sat nearby. They're flexible. They can do other stuff and come back to that objective. If they stay in combat with you, you'll fight it out for a couple more turns, and eventually you'll take that objective because assault marines will ultimately win the fight against most obset units, even if they're outnumbered. Generally, you're going for weak units. You're picking on the weak. Now, what you've effectively done there is you've used them to soften up the enemy to assault, a dug-in position and take it effectively with minimal losses to your own OBSEC troops and minimal losses to points. Very, very low risk, high reward. Now, the other job that you will do with these units on occasion is that you will trim the fat off the enemy. So say the enemy just has loads and loads and loads and loads of OBSEC troops, a big horde of Tyranids or Orcs or Guardsmen or whatever coming at an objective or pushing up the lines. You can just jump these guys out, run them into a unit and tie them up for a couple of turns because they don't die that easily against mediocre troops because they're still Space Marines at the end of the day. So that's one effective thing you can do sort of when they go into fanatic mode. So the other thing that they can do is they can pick off. The final thing they can do in terms of sort of jumping out on the final thing this unit can do, this loadout can do, is it can pick off low level characters. So let's say you're sat in your Rhino, you're close to, you've driven up 12, 24 inches, you're in the enemy's face, and all of a sudden a low level psyker does he goes for a smite on your Rhino or whatever, and he does a perils. Your assault marine should smell blood. Rev those chainswords, boys. It's witch purging time. Because a 2 wound psyche, he's probably only got a 5-up invuln, toughness 3 or 4. You jump your guys out, run round the side of the troops he's stood behind because you've got a 6-inch move, 9-inch move, so you can just run around the side of some troops. If you see the opportunity, jump on him, kill the psyker. Sergeants that have taken Space Marine lieutenants that have taken a wound, Chaos Aspiring Champions that have taken a wound, anything that's sort of taken a wound from, a mortal wound from, a vehicle exploding nearby, or, anything that's just slightly softened up, they can also jump out and pick on. And really low level characters, like there's loads of characters in 8th edition that are, around 70 points-ish, 50 to 70 points, and they're not that good. They don't have an invuln, but they have a really good buff for an army. And this is a way for you to soften up all of the enemy positions, soften up the enemy's combat ability in general across their army or in a certain area. Because if you can jump out with these 5 assault marines with that power weapon, that just gives you that chance, that gives you that guarantee to get some wounds through. So they can't just, you fluff it a bit and they get some good rolls in their armor saves and it all goes to pot. That power sword gives you that little bit of extra ability without looking too dangerous, whilst you're moving up the board. Once you've got into position, you've done your job, you've killed that psyker, or you've killed that little buff character, or you've softened up that position so your tactical marines can move on to it. Or you've taken the position, whatever. Once you've done that, if the unit dies, it doesn't matter. You've spent very little on them, and you've got what you wanted out of them. These are suicide missions, effectively. The units don't live to the end of the game. It depends when you jump them out, but you want them out of the transport by turn 3, picking on something. You take your opportunity, you use them to soften up an objective, kill off some obsec units, and pick on weak, low-level characters. So, that's everything you're going to do with that power weapon unit. And, it takes a bit of practice, but with a little bit of practice, and I'm talking within your second game, sort of comfortably in your third game, you'll be using that unit, and it's cost you 69, 70 points. You'll be using that unit to massive effectiveness in your armies. And what you've got to remember is, Blood Angels, they're often a very elite army with like a low model count, and you don't want to be using your elite units for these dirty jobs. The assault marines are there to do the dirty jobs. They're there to run in to the dug in positions, get machine gunned on the way in, lose a guy, chop them up. Next turn the enemy sees the threat, battle cannons them, wipes them out. That's their job. You don't want to use Death Company for that. You just want to use these guys for that. They won't draw attention moving up the board. They'll achieve their objective, and then what happens, happens. Now, you'll have to excuse me because this video is probably going to be probably another 10 minutes, just because there's a little more to talk about. Probably not quite 10 minutes, but what you've got to remember is I am describing everything that you can do with Assault Marines to be effective in your army, and sort of use those units that you've not been using recently, or try out some new units, try out some new tactics against your opponents to mix it up, break the stalemate, defeat your opponents. So there's a lot to get in, so I apologise for the length of the video at this point. So, just sort of finishing off, your other unit, your other loadout, the 5 men with jump packs and no power weapons. Now, they have another couple of roles, so what they're going to do is they're going to work even further outside the actions. They're going to be moving onto those isolated objectives, sort of outside the battlefield. All the actions taking place on the left to centre, but the enemy on the back right or the mid right, they've got a 5-man unit of scouts, or a 5-man unit of Eldar scouts, whatever they're called, something like that, something and nothing. And what you're going to do is you're going to drop down more than 9 inches away from them and in cover. And basically the thing you want to do with the placement here is you want to stay away from as much small arms fire as possible. You don't need to get the charge off when you drop them in, the turn that you drop them in. That's not the point. The point is that they stay with 5 guys and can get the charge the turn after. Okay, if you can drop behind a wall where they can't be seen 9 inches away and get a charge in, then sweet, but that's not the essential thing here. The essential thing here is that you drop them in nice and safe, well away from the action, looking at a unit that you're going to pick off on the edge, the most exposed enemy unit. And this could be a unit that is behind enemy lines. You could be dropping sort of 10 inches away from a reasonably tough enemy unit, but a hop, skip and a jump behind there is a little unit of Pathfinders that you want to wipe out, or something like that, or an obsec unit. So you drop these guys in. Then what you do is, in the next turn, you rev up your chainswords and you attack obsec units that have taken a little bit of damage here and there. So in preparation for these guys' attack, obviously they're going to chuck their crack grenade, fire their bolt pistols, do a little, probably trim off a model or two here and there. But you also, with those storm bolts that you've got sat around, that you're not going to have much firepower in this area because the enemy hasn't got much firepower in this area. This is an isolated part of the battlefield. But if you've got a unit of snipers, or just a unit, just a little bit of spare firepower that's going, that doesn't need to be used in the main battlefield, that can, you know, spray a couple of shots off to kill a model before these guys charge in, great, but that's all you're going to dedicate to their assault. That's all you're going to give them in terms of help. You hop them in, you kill that unit. If that takes you 2 turns and 4 rounds of combat, then that's what it takes. But ultimately at the end of it, you will probably have 3, 4 models, possibly even 5 models left, because you're targeting, you know, strength 3 guys with no AP, probably 1 attack each, you know, and you're in power armor and toughness 4. So, you know, it'll take a few rounds of combat, but overall, you'll butcher that unit, you'll kill them. Then you have a look around, you say to yourself, right, oh look, it's turn 4 now, and there's a unit of, you know, 3 fire warriors over there, or oh look, there's a, you know, a little firecast character over there from Tau, or there's a little psyker over there, like I mentioned earlier, or something like that, who's a little isolated, a little exposed, maybe because your enemy's not got that many units left, because, you know, your Terminators have really been doing their work, your Death Company have really been doing their work. They're, you know, they're starting to spread weaker units out across the battlefield to sort of make a run for objectives. So like, oh, there's 2 little bikes. Oh, there's, you know, 4 tactical marines, you know, at the most, kind of thing. That would be the biggest thing you'd take on. And what you'll do is you'll look for one of those units that's taking a punt on an objective, or taking a risk, basically, and sort of you pounce on them, and you stay out of the main battle. And you spend, you know, a couple of rounds of combat, 3, maybe 4 rounds of combat, killing them. And at that point, you have massively got your points back, and it's around turn 5, and you've killed a couple of cheap, weak units. But you've got your points back, and you've taken away, hopefully, a couple of their OBSEC units when they really need them. At this point, it's late in the game. These Assault Marines are really going to be able to act with impunity, because as I mentioned before, you know, even if there's only, you know, a handful of them left, they've lost a couple of guys at most. You want to be targeting units cleverly, so that at most they've lost a couple at this point. You've got 3 guys left. It's turn 5. Oh look, there's an objective that you moved off earlier. It was the isolated objective with that unit on that you attacked in turn 2 or 3. And you hit that, maybe 3 or 4 even. You hit that unit, it took you a couple of turns, you killed it, you moved off, you killed this unit. And that unit was left exposed, isolated. Maybe your opponent's sent a unit running for it because it sees it's isolated, but effectively you've now got a 3 or 4 man unit, toughness 4, power armor, with jetpacks who can move really fast, and you can just hop back onto exposed objectives that are unoccupied. You know, one of the Eldar's favourite tricks. Or you can just hop onto other objectives that say you've got 1 TAC Marine clinging on for dear life onto an objective 12 inches away from the Assault Marine, you know, bit closer to the action, but it's turn 5, the game might end, your opponent's got 1 more turn, he might just unload what last firepower he's got on to kill this last tactical marine off. He's not got guys nearby, but he'll take you off the objective, you'll lose 3 points, and he'll win the game just about, or you'll get a minor victory in a tournament instead of a major victory, or you'll get a major loss in a tournament instead of a minor loss, or something like that. You know, one of those minor things which is really on the edge. Hop your 3, 4 Assault Marines on there. Oh look, now he just can't take you off the objective. Who cares that they haven't got OBSEC? That the Assault Marines haven't got OBSEC? Because he hasn't got OBSEC in that area. You killed his OBSEC. You know, people say, oh, what's the point in taking Assault Marines? You know, you can take Tactical Marines, they're basically the same, but they've got OBSEC. Yeah, well, the whole point is you use your Assault Marines to more effectively kill OBSEC units than Tactical Marines can do. Tactical Marines have loads of uses on the battlefield, and probably a much greater, well, definitely a much greater variety of uses than Assault Marines. But what Assault Marines do, and what I've just described to you, they do better than any other unit we have available to us, because all of our other units are way too valuable to be doing this kind of stuff. But these, because they're needed to do their damage, because we have to put out a high level of damage every turn to win games. That's the Blood Angel way. But you still need those units. That's one of the things Guard have. You know, they have units that they can just get onto objectives, units to burn. You know, we need units to burn too. We need units that can plug the gap. We need units that can do all of these things cheaply and effectively with, you know, the maximum reward for the minimum risk possible. So when you're building your list, please just take the time. If you've listened to this whole video, please just take the time to squeeze in, trim a few points here and there, squeeze in a 69-70 point unit or an 80 point jump pack unit. Try all of this stuff out, and you know, I guarantee you 2 or 3 games of trying this stuff out and you will have it down to a T, and you will be using these guys to tip games in your favour consistently. You know, it takes the whole army to win games, but these will be a component of your army that will be often overlooked by your opponent, but in your eyes, absolutely essential. So remember, you've got 2 types of unit. One one that you use to fulfill an objective, and then if it dies, it dies, and one that you conversely really want to keep alive, draw as little attention to as possible, and seize those late game objectives. Those are the two roles. Those are the 2 loadouts to fulfill those roles. I hope that you have managed to make your way through this massive amount of information, and that it's been relatively accessible to you. Thank you very much for your time. This is the Schola Progenium. Goodbye.